Welcome, everybody, to another installment of the Show Will Go On Business Survival Series. This is part of the Intentional Success Series. We're going to be running these through the through the first week of June to do whatever we can to help you guys weather the storm that we're in. We've got a long road ahead of us, lots of things that you can do to make sure that you can last as long as possible. Get out of your headspace where you're worried about the things that you can't control and maybe focus on the things that you can control so that we can take advantage of the time that we have, maybe make some improvements in our business or find some things that we can do to just work a little bit better. So having said that, I'm Tom Stimson, as always, your host. I'll do a couple of reminders here. Avixa has taken InfoComm online. InfoComm 2020 has been rebranded as InfoComm Connected. So take a screenshot there, learn more about it. I don't know if registration is open as of now, but it's opening up very, very soon. I'll be one of the presenters. I've got a small slot as well as many other folks. So please take a look at that, see what they have to offer. And there are elements of it that are going to extend into the summer, well into July. So it's not going to be a hunker down for 2 days and stare at your screen kind of thing. We're going to try and spread the information out over time, keep everybody connected as best as we can. The Business Survival Exchange is really for you guys, for everybody who attends this webinar, to get together with your other friends from Avixa, talk about the day's events, talk about what we talk about here today, process that with each other, see if you can dig down deeper into it. I'm getting good reports on how well that's working. And if you're not thrilled about the fact that you're having to live in the Zoom world, but you'd like to know how Zoom actually works, this is a good example of how businesses use Zoom, and it can do breakout groups and things like that, so it's worth checking out. I'm still taking applications for the next owners coaching group. I've got a couple slots left. I'd really like to get them filled so that we can start that group next week. This is a chance to work on your business as economically as I can possibly offer with my help and input. So if you want me to be involved in that, you want some access to me, some one-on-one coaching with me, as well as a group of people to help support you in figuring out how to take your business to the next level or get it back to the level from 3 years ago, this is a group for you. So please check it out. And if you're not sure that group is right for you, email me. Let's set up a time to chat. Maybe I have something else that will work for you better, or maybe you'll better understand how the group works for you. So it's worth looking into. Still doing free calls for you. If you need some help processing anything in your business or better understanding something that we've talked about here in the webinar, schedule a free 15-minute call. Happy to answer all of your questions. I enjoy it. I know you'll get something out of it that you can use that's actionable for you. I think most people will agree it was well worth the investment in their time, considering that it costs like nothing. So do check that out. And of course, the replay page is here in case any of you forgot. Since we're now doing this every single week, I think everybody has the system down. AV Matters Facebook group, get on, talk to folks, ask questions, share ideas. And then there's an AV Matters podcast. You know, Wallace Johnson has been doing podcasts. He's interviewed me several times talking about going deeper into some of the stuff on the webinar. He comes back with questions after the Business Survival Exchange and says, hey, lots of people asked about this, talked about this, came up with this idea. What are your thoughts on that? So it's a great listen. They're not terribly long. So if you're tired of listening to me, don't worry, it doesn't last for very long. But I get a lot out of them. I think the information on this is really good. And Wallace asks great, great questions. So without any further ado, let's kind of move forward into this week's content. I've got 4 words of the week this week. Some of this came out of your chat from last week, which was fantastic, by the way. The chat's kind of becoming the highlight of my webinar day, is seeing the things that, going back later and seeing all the things that you guys talk about or ideas that you share. Pivot, adaptive, agile, nimble. We're all having to change course. We're all having to do things that we didn't expect to have to do. We may not always like our choices, but the fact of the matter is, if we don't make a choice, that's also a decision. So if you choose not to decide, you've made a choice. You can choose to pivot, you can choose to adapt, and that's really what this webinar series is all about. I encourage you to do that. Again, we're in this for the long haul. Hurry up and wait's not going to solve our problem this time. We're going to actually have to make some moves because it's going to be difficult to survive without doing that. A couple of updates. I'm still, I still have a lot of conversations with folks. I had a couple of thoughts that I wanted to get across that have really nothing to do with the content. Right now, there's a lot of things that you might be able to do. Okay, you could do this, you could do that, and I want you to distinguish and think really hard about distinguishing between what you can do and what you should do. There's lots of things you could do right now, but there's not as many things that you should do, and we need to focus on finding the shoulds. The cans are the shiny objects, they're the squirrels of business thinking, and sometimes we come up with a great idea and we run at it without thinking if it's something that we should actually do. So it's better to get one thing right and not go insane than to try and do 5 things incorrectly or with no great results. So you've got the opportunity to think long and hard about what you're doing. Do one thing, do it very well, master it, go on to the next thing. I think that's my best advice for times like these, where trying 5 different things is probably not your best choice, best use of your resources and your time. Slow and steady gets the job done. When I first started working as a stagehand, we went through an orientation in order to get on to the gig list. And one of the things that the manager emphasized over and over again was, don't try and work fast to impress people. Slow and steady will get the job done. And I followed that. So I tend to work at a good pace. That's just my nature. I learned how to work a little bit more slowly, a little bit more carefully, so that I could be a useful technician. And that's helped me quite a bit throughout my career. And then in terms of all the stuff we're dealing with, the news is not really getting any better. We've got a long wait ahead of us. There is some work that is coming back. We're seeing some streaming gigs. We're going to see some live in-person gigs in a limited way. Really, it is probably in the next few weeks, next few months at the very least. But it's not the same thing as business coming back. So what gets frustrating right now, besides the fact that there's so much division in how people view our situation and our life in general, is that the middle ground is probably where we need to have our business minds. If you're looking at predictions and trends, there's extremes in either direction. Recognize that there are extremes. There's very rarely that an extreme position is going to help you out in business. Sometimes I'm wrong, but the fact is, most of us are going to thrive and do a lot better and make better decisions and longer held decisions if we find that middle ground. So just some reminders as you're processing all of this. And sometimes we reach the limits of our tolerance and have frustrating days and depressed days, days where we just think it's not going to work. And remind yourself of these things. Take the day off, do something for yourself, and get back to it, right? Because you'll come back around again. So if you're fighting it, if you're fighting the demons, walk away from the business a little bit. Trust me, right now it's not going anywhere. Take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. Put your mask on first. Get your oxygen levels back up, and then take another stab at it. Last week's, I asked a question about, what kind of events are you doing? Ask you to share that in chat. Again, please do that. If you've done an event this week, or if you've had an opportunity come up that will give us some hope, feel free to share it. I know not all of these things are ideally what everybody would like to do, but a lot of us are very excited to hear that there is this kind of stuff going on out there. I had one owner I talked to earlier. He saw the comment here about maybe it's not, 60 virtual meeting webinars since March 22nd. Even if they were $1,000 a piece, okay, that was twice as much business as this business owner had done. And all of a sudden he says, well, wait a minute, maybe there is something in helping people with Zoom meetings. Is it sexy? No, not really. Does it use your 400 tiles of LED? Probably not. But it's some revenue. It's going to help keep the doors open. It's going to help pay the rent. And that's what we're trying to do. So great comments in the streaming. I did put these up on the webpage last week. I put the whole chat text up there for you. If you have another interesting chat today, I'll put that up there as well, because I think it's great. So I had 3 pages of comments that I extracted out of last week's chat about the types of events. All the virtual high school graduations. I mean, I'm on Facebook. I'm seeing these things all the time. There's little bits of work in there. It is show business. It may not be the show business that you thought you signed up for, but it's still a show. Installation jobs and stuff coming up. There's stuff out there, guys. There's reasons to be talking to customers, and there's reasons to figure out how to leverage what you know how to do, what resources you have that you might apply to it. It may only use 5% of your resources, and you've got thousands or millions of dollars of equipment sitting there idle, but it's a chance to stay in the game and keep working. Interesting, a document came up this week, and I'll post the link because I didn't have time to put the QR code on here. The Event Safety Alliance has developed a 30-page reopening guide. It's worth looking at. It's got some great information in it, great ideas. Nothing is going to move the earth, but there are a lot of things in here that you probably have not considered. It's a great thing that you can share with clients who are thinking about having an event. Anything you can do to help better educate your clients, it increases your credibility, and it's going to make you a more viable supplier for them. So keep that up. Reminder, yeah, have fun, talk in the chat, share, talk to each other. I'm going to watch the Q&A, so if you got questions that you want to ask today, something that you wish I would talk about, it doesn't even have to be on the content today, but always post a question on there. I try and get to them. If not, I will share your question next week if I think it was really important, so don't hesitate to do that. We've already got a couple questions going. I'll take a look at them in just a minute. But I want to get on with the content because I'm excited about today's content. So management. I told you to do a management session this week. We'll talk a little bit about management topics. One of the things about managers is that their job is to execute strategy, right? So managers are the ones who implement the tactics that support the strategy. And we're seeing a whole lot of everything old is new again, because so many of us are having to go back to startup mode, go back to the early days of the business, remember what it was like when there was only 5 employees instead of 50 or 150 employees. And there's a lot of things that we could be doing and thinking about right now and preparing for the future, and management do that. So I thought, well, Tom, how can I help people better understand how to consider their options and what they should be working on, where they can put their energies? And it came to me that I needed to figure out how to gamify it. You know, if you can make a game of something, people will engage with it, understand the moving parts a little bit better, and get out there and play. So I love strategy games. Most of the games I play on my phone or my iPad or on my computer are strategy games. I really enjoy them, and I grew up with board games and strategy games like Risk and, well, Monopoly. What you're looking at here is a 1935 Monopoly board. This is not the first board. This is probably the second or third board on it. And if you'll notice, the prices aren't even on the properties. My grandfather hand wrote in, or actually that's probably my grandmother, hand wrote in these prices. And so I've still got this original set, plus about 20 other Monopoly sets. I love Monopoly boards. I love the game. I love the concept. I've played it since I was a kid. I still play it. And so I dug this out. I just thought I'd share this picture with you because it's a great lead into what I'm going to talk about today. So I collect Monopoly games. Not much about the game has changed since it first came out. As a matter of fact, I think the rules are pretty much identical. Now, there's some variations that we all play. Every household had their own version of rules to make the game go a little bit faster. You can make it harder by starting with less money, but mostly we try and make it easier by maybe dealing out properties in advance, or making free parking actually pay you something, or landing on go pays double. We have all these different rules that we can apply, but in general, the strategy. I want to get a part here. The strategy for Monopoly has not changed since it came out. If you want to win at Monopoly, and people do play it competitively because it is a strategy game, there are some very simple things that you follow. And I've played thousands of games. One, you acquire properties when you can. If you have an opportunity to get a property, get it. You may not need the property, but you can trade it yet later. You can mortgage it. It becomes leverage. You build houses slowly. You know, when you're a kid, you want to build your houses all at once because it's worth lots of money. And then you get one move down the road and you land on somebody else's and you have no money to pay it back, which leads us to the third strategy, which is conserve cash. So you always want to have enough cash to make it around the board at any stage of the game. There is a strategy about the orange properties. The orange properties are the ones on the top left, you know, New York and Tennessee and St. James Place. These properties get landed on more than any others on the board. And the reason is pretty darn simple. One, it's the way the dice come up. 6, 7, and 8 are the most common numbers. If you land on go to jail or get a go to jail card, you're going to start from the jail, which 6 will take you to St. James Place. 8 will take you to Tennessee. So these are very commonly landed on property. So owning them gives you an advantage. So secure the orange properties. Of course, you want to get a monopoly whenever you can. So one reason you acquire properties is so that you can trade and trade strategically. And one of the things that I figured out as a kid was I would trade properties to people who had who would end up trading to someone else. In other words, I would trade that would force another trade that would open up an opportunity for me. So it was like playing chess. I also grew up playing chess. You know, it's that strategy game, thinking 2 and 3 moves ahead. And most of us don't realize Monopoly can be really that strategic. But, you know, I geek out over this kind of stuff. So I'm going to do something with it. So management's job is to execute the strategy, taking into consideration the resources of the business, the boundaries of the work environment, of the workplace, the marketplace, the circumstances that you're in. Right now, we're in a pandemic. Nobody's written the book on how to prepare for that yet. And then the rules. There's always rules and laws and things that we have to follow and all of this. So resources, boundaries, circumstances, and rules. So workers are often underaware of the issues related to managing a business vis-a-vis the strategy. So they're also frequently unaware of the strategy. So helping communicate these things, as I've said many times, is all very important to helping how to make this all work. So I have done something just absolutely crazy. I invented a board game for you. We'll call it Live Eventopoly. Welcome to Live Eventopoly. We're going to play something, and I have to say, it's not at all like the game of Monopoly. It really has nothing to do with it. The rules are quite different. Instead of streets, we're going to have markets. And instead of properties, we're going to have event segments, different types of events. And instead of houses and hotels, we're going to use road cases and trucks. And instead of paying rent when we land on something, there's going to be fees that are remitted. In my game, you don't go around and around the board. You always start from go. You get to throw your dice and you go where those dice take you. Because in my game, you can have more than 2 dice. You start with 1, you can buy more dice. The more dice you buy, okay, the farther you can go. You can reduce your boundaries. So our resource is still money. Our boundaries are the number of dice that you have that says how far you can go around the board. If you want to play out there in the branding world, in our experiential marketing world, you better have a handful of dice so that you can get all the way around the board, because you only get 1 throw per turn. And then you go back to go again. The circumstances on the board, well, we've replaced a lot of what would have been chance, community chests, and things like that with opportunity spaces and failure spaces, which trigger activities. So lots of stuff going on here. The rules are very market driven in all of this. So if you land on an event that any one of you can have a road case on, you pay sub-rental fees to whoever the other occupants are. more than one player, the players are all suppliers like you, can own road cases on any of these event types around the board, right? Now, in this game, all the players are providers, and the customer is the bank. And we have one round, well, I'll explain more of that in a minute. We're going to get money out of customers as well. So let's take a quick spin around the board. I just want you to see what's going on. And I will tell you right now, I have a blank board for you where you can change the market segments and make them anything you want. You can change the types of events, so you can play this game your way for your company and your situation. There's a few rules that need to be completed, because this is not a complete set of rules, because this is just a webinar, right? So going from go, you've got some rental markets, some meeting market stuff, a couple of opportunities, because this is the low risk street on the board. This is the low risk marketplace. The road cases cost less, the rents will be less. You won't make as much money here, but it's fairly low risk, and that's what a lot of us are working with. And if you only have one die, this is as far as you're going to get. Matter of fact, if you only have two die, it's going to be hard to get past here. So there's a good chance you're going to spend a lot of time in this area. Moving around the board, we get into the low middle risk, which are, you know, small business conferences, association meetings. In my model, yours might be different. Every site has a B2B category, because there's B2B in all spaces. Anybody can buy a house or buy a road case for B2B without landing on it. But once you've landed on a property and you've put a road case on it, you can add more road cases in other turns. The mid to high risk is the bigger corporate work, the big brand stuff. And then the high risk things that we get involved with are the branding events, brand activations, experiential marketing, those colossal events, you know, 4,000 LED tiles. These are very unique events. So they're all here, they're all represented in one way or another. And of course, you can do your own version of this. So one element of this, which makes it really interesting, is that after all the suppliers, you have played your turns and everybody's had one roll of the dice, then we have a customer play. Well, we don't need another person to play the customer. We simply take a single die, we roll it, and wherever that takes the customer, they pay rent there, but they pay a higher rent or a higher fee than the subrental fee. So the bank actually pays the fee because the customer is the bank, and then they roll the dice again and roll the dice again because they're only rolling one die. So on the average, they're going to move 3 to 4 spaces per roll. They're going to go all the way around the board, which means they're going to hit a lot of you, distribute a lot of money around the board, and then the customer's turn is over and we go back to the suppliers taking another round, building up their businesses, making strategic choices about where they want to invest. Do they want to buy another dice? And do they need more dice and buy another die? Or do they want to save their money? Do they want to build houses or road cases, move them into trucks? You've got a lot of choices to think through here. These are exactly the things that we think about when we're trying to build our business. So what I have for you on the website or on the web page afterwards is I will post, you know, this image here, which has the basic rules on there so that you can look at this a little bit more closely. And then I'm also going to post a version of this that has no markets and no event types listed on there. You can print it out and create your own and have some fun with it. Now, are you going to actually sit down and play a game? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. What I want you to do is I want you to use it to think. I want you to learn how to think strategically about your business and how you make choices and why they're important. Are you risk averse? Okay, or do you like to use risk to move yourself forward? Are you the person that's always going to be buying another die whenever you can get another die, so you can have all the dice so that you can land anywhere you want? And oh, by the way, you can throw as many dice as you want, but you can't throw more than you have, right? So you can make some choices. If you have 6 dice, you may not want to end up on this particular roll on the far side of the board. Maybe you want to end up on the low mid side of the board. So you're going to pull out 3 dice and just throw 3 instead. These are the kind of strategic choices that you need to be making in your business every day. So get it, look at the rules, have some fun with it. Here's some ways that you can use it. Look for the rules that are missing. Look for the things that you might want to add in there. Feel free to send them to me. I mean, I'll probably collect them all and come up with a better set of rules one of these days when I'm bored. You might play a mock game to think more strategically, to see how it would go, see where the holes in it, because the same holes that are in this little subset of rules for this game are the same holes that are in our business life. And we need to find those holes, and we need to figure out how we can stick ourselves in there and make market for ourselves. And then think about your own market priorities. Have you done all you should have done to be a player in those markets? Or are you aspiring to something that is way over there in the high risk market, but you've only got the resources to work in the low risk market or the low mid market? Okay? And this is something I see all the time. Sometimes we chase revenue, which are in high risk jobs. Sometimes it's revenue in low risk jobs that we're not looking at or not considering or not doing the extra effort to try and get to it. So think about your business. What can you be doing to be more competitive? And then here's some things that it teaches us. As I worked through this and tried to figure out all the things, what the rules need to be, how would gameplay actually work, it became very apparent that diversification means you have more chances at income. Okay, so if I put a road case on as many properties as I can land on, then I have more chances to get income, albeit small, because I only have one road case, as opposed to focus, which means as soon as I land on a property and I can put road cases on it, as I collect money, I need to put more and more road cases on it. And that means I'll get more money when somebody actually lands there, which is a focus strategy. Remember last week we talked about diversification strategies and focus strategies. Okay? And there's the difference between the two right there on this board. Barriers to entry. There are low barriers to entry in this game for anybody who is risk averse. They're all going to spend their time and their money down there on that low risk section of the board at the beginning of the game. So low barriers of entry are going to attract risk averse investors. If you want to get out of the crowded part of the marketplace, you're going to have to take on more risks to do that. Bad luck is sometimes random. Be ready, keep some cash on hand. If you'll notice on the board, there's more bad luck in the higher risk markets than there was in the low risk market. There are more opportunities, which was good luck, in the low risk market, and there are no extra opportunities on the high risk side of the board. So there's some, I thought about a lot of this stuff here. Loans and investors, which are part of the game, can help you grow, but beware of liquidation, because there's a couple of spots on the board where you're going to suddenly need to pay the investor back. You're going to have to pay interest on that loan that you got from them. So keep that in mind. We don't always have control on when our loans might get recalled. And again, anything like a pandemic, as if we'll ever have this again, is going to trigger the kinds of capital demands that we didn't anticipate. So how can we be better prepared for the unknown? Now, investing in more dice lets you reach grander projects, but it doesn't guarantee you can get there. Think about your business. You went out and you bought equipment to do something really grand, or you opened an office in another city, but that doesn't guarantee success. So sometimes we throw the dice because we have them, but we don't get the results that we needed. That's what risk is all about. We sometimes forget to consider what failure looks like if we execute a plan. We often consider what success looks like. So think about the potential for failure and what the consequences of failure actually would be. And in this game, winning doesn't require that others lose. I'm a big proponent of not focusing on the competition. I think competition is a distraction. Other people's pricing is a distraction. Somebody else winning a job that you were trying to win is a distraction. It's not their success that won the job. It was your failure that didn't win the job. I always look internally to figure out if I wasn't successful, what did I do wrong, not what did somebody else do, and was it fair? In this game, it's all on you. Nobody else's decisions are really going to affect you to any great degree. And then going into a game like this without a strategy means you're going to miss good opportunities. You think about all those times you played as a kid, not understanding the rules and all the opportunities that you missed. And it's fun to go back and play again now that you better understand how things all work. So, so that's not the whole webinar. This is just something that I came up with over the weekend. I got hooked on the idea. I started seeing all the things that how it could work for you and how you could apply it. And I think it's fun to get ourselves out of the drudgery that we're in right now and look at something completely differently. And I'm pretty sure no one on the call today has looked at their business as a board game. Well, now you can. You're welcome. All right. Let me take a quick look here and see if there's any questions I'm going to grab real quick, and then I'm going to talk about restarting, because there's an awful lot of restarting going on around the US and around the world. Some of it's premature, some of it's being very careful and calculated, but it's affecting how we think. It's becoming noise that we're having to deal with, so I want to talk a little bit about that and break down the phases of restarting and what you should be doing in whatever phase that you might be facing right now. Let's see. Can't tell if this is a question or a comment, so I'm just going to go ahead and read through it. There will be business. It will just be different. We are getting multiple calls on broadcasting to multiple rooms at a single site to keep crowd size to state mandates. Yes, I think one of the things that we're going to see is that if they make crowd size smaller, we're going to see lots of satellite rooms, and which will then be the breakout rooms. So there's a lot of logistics and planning that we can apply to this. Again, we have skills that will help our clients make better applications of what they're trying to do. We're trying to distance. We're also experts on how to use space. So let's make sure we get involved in those conversations. Question, how do you think companies should handle freelancers, contractors, both now and moving forward, specifically related to sensitive things like rate negotiation? There's a lot of levels in that question. I'm pretty much a transparent guy. I don't mind it. Freelancers all pretty much know what each other charge. They're not restricted like some employees are to talk about, but your employees all talk about what they get paid too. So don't kid yourself. I think freelancers and contractors are going to be a much bigger part of your world. If I haven't made that clear, I'll need to go back and re-listen to the last 7 or 8 webinars, but I think I've said that a number of times that we're going to be outsourcing a lot more. It doesn't make sense for us to build up overhead and try and do everything internally. That's too much risk. That's buying too many dice. So I think freelancers and contractors, they are part of our family. They may not be employees in the sense that they're coming to the Christmas dinner, but they are part of your business family in that they're vital to what you do. They are strategic partners or strategic suppliers. It's important to have great relationships from them. Negotiating rates, when you're negotiating rates with a supplier, you can ask for a better deal, and you should, and then you can take or leave the deal that's on the table. Likewise, they can do the same thing. So it's a little bit different than negotiating with a customer. When you have something that they need and they've said they want to work with you, now all you have to do is agree on the price and what the trade-offs are. Are there trade-offs when negotiating with a supplier? Of course there are. We could probably all do a better job of that. So let me think about that. Maybe that's something I'll add into one of the next couple of weeks' webinars. Can I see the event safety brochure? I'm not going to mention it again. It'll be on the replay page. I'll give you a link where you can go do it. But if you Google Event Safety Alliance, you can find it on their thing, and it's a free download. You just need to give them your information, right? You got to give up your email and your company name, and it's a quick download. So take a look at that. All right, let's move on. Phases of restarting. Going back to the very first one of these webinars, a long time ago, back in March, I talked about airplane mode, and our job at that time, I was urging all of you to look at what's happening, be aware that your business was not just taking a pause, it was going to grind to a halt for not just weeks, or days or weeks, but for months. And you needed to get your business into airplane mode as quickly as possible. Now, fortunately, many of you heeded my advice. You made the furloughs that you needed to make as quickly as you need to make them. Now we're into subsidy money, and we have a lot of employees that are now getting, we're paying them through PPP or whatever government subsidy you have in your country. But here's what we should be doing, because we are still all technically in airplane mode, but we're in that pre-restart. We're starting to see a phase one in front of us, or phase one's coming, or maybe we're right into it. We should be communicating with employees. We need to talk about the phases and triggers and what's going to happen next as best as you know how, right? Communicating with customers. Want to be available to communicate. A lot of you shut down. A lot of you left it to your salespeople, so it wasn't a company communicating to customers. It was individuals, which is not necessarily the best practice in this situation. You're not getting a strategic message out to them. So make sure you're communicating with customers as a business. Make sure that management is communicating, okay? That you need to establish your position on the kinds of work that you will do. If somebody calls up and they want you to do barricades out of pipe and drape, well, suddenly you're in the barricade business, aren't you? So, but they need to communicate that, make sure that people understand that. And again, whenever you can establish, and I'll talk about triggers in these phases, what's going to trigger the next phase? Or when are we going to restart? Well, when we get our PPP money, we're going to do this. Okay, and then what? Then this happens, but that's about as far ahead as you can get. So, restart plans and phases, okay? There's almost always a customer announcement when you do a phase. You need to let people know what's happening, what's changed, how they can take advantage of it, how it's going to affect them, what information they need to understand about how to do this. Informational videos, email messages, use familiar faces in your organization to communicate with folks. There's lots of good practices of customer announcements that we haven't been taking advantage of. And you have all these opportunities to communicate, so please jump on them. There's a sales plan, an operational plan, and a financial plan for each one of these phases. You'll need to develop yours. I'm going to give you the high points of this, and then there's always a trigger to the next phase. So these announcements, these phases all have these elements in there. So in phase one, which is where a lot of us are right now, if you, a lot of states have allowed you to go back to the warehouse. They're allowing workers and socially distanced applications with the right PPP on to come back and work in your warehouse, or maybe work in the office a little bit. And most of us in our industry are using this as a make-ready time. So we're trying to get ready for some business. So one, you're going to be sheltering in place is going to be relaxed. Your distancing is going to be enforced, so make sure that your protocols for working in the office is clear. How many people can be on the office at the time? How are you giving permission for people to come be in the office for your salaried employees? I've seen a couple situations where there's a lot of people who've been at home for 8 weeks, and the first chance they got, they all wanted to rush to the office and get out of the house. I probably would do that too, except then it was too many people in the office. So it created problems with some other things that were getting done. So again, you have to communicate. Sales is still probably going to be a work from home at this point. If you're not going customer by customer, if you haven't personally talked to 80% of your top 80% of customers from last year and this year, then you're behind the curve. Get that work done. Start talking to them. Operations is probably going to do some sort of rotation to help prep the shop. If you're doing some new operational models that you're going to implement, now's the time to implement them. If you're going to move some things around or dig some stuff out that you haven't used for a long time, now's the time to do it. Accounting should be catching up. You've got some PPP money, some EIDL funds. Maybe that line of credit came through. but you need to get caught up on stuff and communicate to all of your accounts payable and accounts receivable in one fashion or another. Look like a company that's doing business again and is not just hunkering down. Phone calls are very important right now, much more so than they've been in a long time. One, the email that your client has may be to an employee who is no longer with you, and now they're going into that email box loop, or it's forwarded to somebody who's got so many emails to look at. Phones are starting to ring again, so make sure your phone is getting answered by a human being, or being monitored by a human being. I recommend having managers rotate this. Senior management first, then sales. This is a high responsibility role right now. We need people who understand the strategy of the business and can give good answers and filter through the questions that are coming in and get it to the right folks if that's what's needed. So that's going to be senior management. Some considerations about this phase 1 period. Senior management and owners are going to be doing a lot of hands-on work that you have not done for years. And I'm not just talking about loading trucks, though you might have to load a truck or help in the warehouse. You're going to be taking customer phone calls. You're going to be processing things that you've had somebody to do for you in the past. Get over it. The only way this is going to work, the only way we're not going to add unnecessary overhead to your business is for you to go back. Remember what it was like when you had 8 employees, because you got 8 employees again. Look at the stuff you did back then. You're going to do it now. Now, the good news is, 20, 30 years ago, you didn't have a well-developed email system. You may not even have had email or a computer set up for the entire business. It's a lot easier now, trust me. Anybody who is working in phase 1, make sure it's directed work. Make sure that they aren't choosing what to work on or coming back into the warehouse and say, yeah, I think I'll start working on that pile of cables. I'll fix some cables. You don't need cables right now. You have other things that are more important. Make sure that all work is directed. You've got some products you want to test. You've got some things to figure out how to do streaming. You need to figure out Zoom, because your clients are using it and they're expecting you to be an expert. So get all of that done. Now, phase 2, we need to define what triggers phase 2 when we're in phase 1. For most of us, that's going to be when our 8-week PPP period ends, and I no longer have full-time pay for these employees, and you're going to go back down into some form of airplane mode. Okay? It may mean more furloughs, it may mean layoffs when that money's gone. Yes, there is a chance it's going to be extended. Yes, Congress is going to look at all that. We can't plan our businesses on things that might happen. We have to go with what we know. Right now, what we know is that when the 8-week period is over and you've paid out all of that money, you probably don't have money to keep people employed, or maybe only a handful of people employed at a reduced salary. So phase 2 starts when the PP period ends, okay? Or you have some ongoing paid projects that require more personnel to be activated or kept on. So when you're making that decision about, hey, we've actually got some work, we need to have a routine, that means you're probably into phase 2. So in phase 2, the demand's increasing a little bit, distancing still applies, there's not enough work to keep you going, but there's a little bit of work going on. So you'll start to develop and start to see a few routines. Don't let them get too routine. Your sales team, whatever's left of them, should be gathering market intelligence. Every time we talk to a client, we're gathering information. We need to share it, let people know what's going on, what are we hearing. That market intelligence will convert to actionable information. So marketing can take that and create messages that will help our customers understand that we're there to help and how we can help and how it will meet their needs. We need that because we're in new territory here. We don't know how to effectively communicate with our customers yet unless we know what our customers are thinking, and this is how we find out. Operations in phase 2 should be running on demand only. You schedule people when there's work to be done. Spread that work around. Don't play favorites here. If you're trying to keep people available for a phase 3 where you hope to hire some folks back, make sure you're spreading that work around. Your finance team, your bookkeeping team is back to probably on demand only. Doesn't take a lot to process accounts payable and accounts receivable when you're not doing much business, but make sure that your purchasing and credit card protocols are strictly enforced. No unauthorized purchases. Nobody getting off the reservation because you have a very tight cash flow plan that you're still implementing. That's still your day-to-day life is checking your cash flow, seeing how you can make that money go farther out, how you can keep your overhead down, unnecessary expenses. So keep your variable costs to a minimum as much as you possibly can. Some considerations in phase 2. There's not going to be a lot of work to be done. That's what you did in phase 1. You did your make ready. Anything in phase 2 is probably busy work, and you can't afford busy work right now. Management should be looking at the big picture at all the time. You've got assumptions, you've got trends, you've got strategies that need to be continually reconsidered, reweighed. How is this going to affect us? How will this news affect us? Ask those questions, discuss it among yourselves. It's your job. You've got to use your brain. Sales at this point should be talking to clients who will have jobs that will happen in phase 4. We kind of know who those folks are. If we've talked to them already, you have certain clientele that are going to have that meeting. I worked with one company who has a fraternal organization that has never missed its annual meeting. They've always had it every August since the 1800s, and they're going to have it in whatever way they're allowed to have it. Instead of having 5,000 attendees, they might have 500 or 300. Okay, but they're going to have that meeting. There's going to be a virtual element to it. Hello, hybrid. You should be working on those proposals. You should be making sure that we're continuing those conversations and updating those things as there's more information. Phase 2 starts to end, and phase 3 is triggered when there is some event meeting distancing criteria that is broadly established by government entities. Right now, we have local, maybe state entities that are making up the rules, almost on a week-by-week or bi-weekly basis. When we have some broader considerations about what's going to be acceptable protocols for gathering people together, that's going to start to elevate our work. What's keeping it away right now, aside from the general fear of going out in public, is that there are no protocols that are mutually agreed upon about how to conduct that. Are you going to turn people away who aren't wearing a mask? And until meeting planners make those decisions and set those criteria and those standards, it's going to be difficult to start scheduling meetings in any broad way. So anything you can do to help that along is probably a good idea. Phase 3, where some of these protocols are now in place and being tested, is what I'm calling the first reopen. The travel industry is going to lead this. Airlines are desperately trying to fly again. Hotels are doing everything they can to get people in them. We're seeing a lot of regional migration on events. I was talking to an owner yesterday who lives in Naples, Florida, and in Miami, just an hour and a half away, you can't go out on the beach, but you can go on the beach in Naples. So when the mayor of Naples opened up the beach, everybody from Miami came in and flooded the beach, and they had to shut it down again. We're going to see that kind of phenomenon on the travel schedule, especially over the summer, where people want to do vacation travel and they want to get out of their home, and I don't blame them. So that's going to mess us up. It's going to make it difficult to do some of the things that we need to do to implement safe, environmentally safe meetings and well-distanced meetings. And there's probably going to be some resurgence, and we're going to get pulled back again. So the first reopen. I recommend trying to focus on your region. If you have a regional business, focus on it. If you have local customers and they have some out-of-town work, you might follow them out, but minimize your points of contact. Maybe you're only sending a project manager and you're working with a local company on the other end. But hey, if you can put a truck on the road and safely do it, yay, that's fantastic. Now, phase 4 starts when those projects really start to firm up, when those big projects in Q4 and in 2020 start to firm up, and the people that have been waiting to make a final decision start making a decision on those bigger projects, that's going to trigger phase 4. Remember what we've talked about on deposits and cancellations and all those protocols, terms and conditions. Okay? You better have, during your make ready, get all that stuff sorted out, because you need to start applying it. Remember, we're not going to ask for a 50% deposit in October for a May job, right? But we could ask for 10%, and here's what that 10% will pay for, and here's work that's going to get done. We want deposits to be non-refundable and really non-negotiable. Okay, that's a win-win for everybody. We're minimizing the cash outlay and the risk for the customer, and we're covering our cash outlay and minimizing our risk. Everybody wins. And then you're not going to be obligated to a refund when that job cancels. So some other considerations in phase 3, resist the urge to bring back a lot of full-time staff. Start practicing part-time workers, freelance workers and contractors. There is going to be some sort of brief return to quarantine conditions in some regions. So just be prepared for that. Have your protocol ready for that. Confirmations are going to be last minute. There's going to be, and when they are confirmed, there's going to be lots of contingencies. People aren't going to want to let go of their money. You know, you have every right and reason to ask for 100% up front 3 days before the job loads in. But clients are going to write some contingencies in there to protect themselves. So be prepared to negotiate those things. Also in phase 3, you're going to get a growing sense of urgency as jobs confirm, a little bit of work here. Oh, these 2 jobs overlap on the same day, the sky is falling. Sales and operations are going to start saying, hey, I need more resources. I need more full-time people. I can't rely on part-timers. You know, I called so-and-so and they weren't available. Be ready for that, because it's going to come. It's what they do. Remind them their job is to take care of that. You know, book people in advance, have multiple people booked in case you can't guarantee their work and they can't guarantee their availability. Those of us who have been booking people for decades know there's lots of tricks to doing this. But urgently, outsource as far in the future as you prudently can. Put some contingencies in there, and let's get going. Let's get some work done. Now, in phase 4, I'm calling this cautiously open. Hopefully we can get open and stay open. There's going to be universally accepted protocols for safe meetings. They're probably going to be very similar around the world, though there are going to be some places that are much better at it, much more traditionally diligent about sanitation, and that will be, hopefully we'll get as good as they are, but I wouldn't expect it. So sanitizing and screening are probably here today. Screening meaning temperature screening, having a device to check people's temperatures when they come to work, or when they come into an event space or into a ballroom. If in terms of crews, I recommend that you check them at the beginning and the end of the day, so that you know if you need to rebook somebody for tomorrow or find a replacement. Flare-ups will be disruptive. If there's a flare-up in your business, it could shut your business down temporarily. It could be a 5-day waiting period where you have to isolate everybody for 5 days before you can go back to work. I don't know what this is going to look like. I've not seen any drafts of these rules. I'm just anticipating something that we need to look at. These isolations will be swift and inconvenient, but if you look at how the countries that have been successful, South Korea, for instance, New Zealand, for instance, how well they've come back is because they've had very stringent policies on monitoring and isolating any flare-ups. Demand is going to start to seem normal again in phase 4, but probably it'll be August of next year before we start thinking we might be past this. Again, assuming that we have some vaccines in place, that as a world, as a globe, we start to feel more secure in the fact that this might be under control. Then we might be able to exhale a little bit and start rebuilding our businesses, have a fantastic 2022. We probably have a great Q4 in 2021 is still my prediction. It's still going to be risky to make project-specific investments. I'd be very leery of a job where I'm going to have to go out and buy, a bunch of hardware. I know you want to. I know you don't want to sub-rent. I know you want to keep more of the money, but the fact is you need to conserve cash. There's still a lot of risk out there. You can still cut some great deals on sub-rentals. Tours and major projects, which are generally require a lot of capital investment with not a lot of guarantees. They're going to need guarantees. The touring industry is going to have to change the way it's funded a little bit. They're going to have to figure out how to spread the risk around so that you don't have to go out and buy $1 million worth of gear to have a tour that cancels after 3 shows. Phase 4, some things to consider. Those cancellation clauses and deposit terms are going to be key negotiating points. A matter of fact, you will have customers by that time who are leading with that. They'll say, here are our deposit and cancellation requirements, and then here's the RFP. So you'll start to see a shift in priorities because they'll know it's going to come down to that. And they probably don't have a problem wasting your time, but they don't want to waste their time and looking at a quote that's not going to adhere to the cancellation deposit terms that they're going to ask for. There's never been a better time than right now than to stop looking like a rental company. Right? Unless you are a rental company and somebody's walking up to a counter and taking a piece of equipment that's prepaid for, pure rental. If you're an event company, great time to stop looking like a rental company. Rentals are very easy to cancel. People are not. It's much easier to get the terms that you need if there's people involved. So don't look like a rental company. Avoid those line item quotes. B2B rentals will probably require deposits to secure. I know that I would be hesitant to tie up equipment unless it was last minute for a B2B partner when there's a chance that I could have rent that somewhere else. So we may be asking each other for deposits, which is not the end of the world. Somebody asked the other day about, hey, are we going to charge customers for PPE equipment? Well, you can try, but I think it's going to be the cost of doing business. And we have a lot of costs to doing business. And our costs are going to increase, but we have to work on getting our business models more functional, which means getting our overhead costs down. And you're going to have to increase your margins. You're going to have to increase your margins in a post-pandemic normality. Okay? Just because your prices go down doesn't mean your margins go down. Okay? If your prices go down and your margins go up, it means you're controlling your costs, you're not over-delivering. There's a whole lot of things we can do to increase our margins, even with price fluctuations in place. You need more margins, you need to hold on to more cash, you need to run not quite so thin in your business in order for all of this to work. So that's what you should be focusing on right now, is how to retool, reboot your business to be more profitable, carry less overhead, be more scalable, so that the next time something like this happens, we won't be impacted quite so severely as we are right now. So keep the questions coming here. Next week, I'm going to go back to marketing a sales topic. I've got some things I want to share with you. Talk about how to reopen the client communications. We're past that point in time where we should ask people how they're holding up. But what do we say to them? What should we be saying to potential customers? What is our reason for reaching out and calling to them, other than to beg them for business, which nobody wants that phone call? So we need to create the expectation and the perception of being a high-valued partner. How are we going to do that? And because we're going to change our fee structure, and we're going to change our terms and conditions. You want to do that from a position of strength and credibility. So what are we going to do to increase our strength and credibility so we can have that conversation? And a final thought, one of my favorite quotes, playwright Tom Stoppard wrote, "We cross our bridges when we come to them and burn them behind us with nothing to show for our progress except a memory of the smell of smoke and a presumption that once our eyes watered." And this is a warning about living too much in the moment. And this pandemic has uncovered a lot of our weaknesses. You know, as one metaphor goes, a recession is like ocean tides. When the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked. And a bunch of us have been out there skinny dipping, and we don't want to be there again. We need to figure out how we can run businesses that are more sustainable. And we have this fantastic opportunity to do that, and an extreme sense of urgency, because in order for our businesses to survive, we're going to have to make some substantial changes in what we're doing. So I'm not going to do any announcements here at the end. I just want to go straight into Q&A question. Lots of good comments happening here. I hope to look at those in a little bit. All right, back to questions. Question here, and this might be a better chat question, by the way. What states or municipalities are opening parks and open air spaces where we can potentially hold graduations or festivals? Here in Southern California, we're supporting a grad event with 167 cars and 2 trailer LED screens and an onstage backdrop LED screen on a private school parking lot. But we could do this in parks, et cetera, if permitted, which would probably be a great question for your parks board, whoever controls the reservations on those spaces. But if anybody else has experience with doing some of that, drop something in the chat, or maybe you guys can communicate offline afterwards. Our company wants us to come back June 1st in DC, right time. Lots of companies are coming back like now. So different markets are different. I know Ohio is reopening this week, I believe. They're, of course, one of the first to self-isolate. So I don't know. Your chances are, I mean, I live in Texas. We've opened up sooner than, I mean, our numbers haven't even started to drop yet. Our numbers are still going up in terms of infections and deaths, but we're going to go ahead and reopen some things so that we can get our haircut. Whether you agree with that or not is neither here nor there. We're really at the mercy of what our government says. Some businesses will reopen if they are allowed to. Some businesses will not reopen even if they're allowed to. And then it's all a matter of what do you do. So for most of us, if I can get people back into the shop, and particularly if I've got them on PPP funds, I should get some work out of them. Otherwise, I'm just paying them to stay at home. So yeah, what's your plan for getting some work done that will effectively make you more prepared for phase 2 and phase 3 work? Piggybacking on rate negotiation for freelancers, our company is asking for significantly lower rates, saying they'll understand and they're hungry for work, so they should take it. How can a scheduler advocate for the contractors more? Well, you have to do this, but here's what you do. You have a company policy that's been handed to you that these are the rates that you need to ask for, and you need to put it out there. You need to go to the freelancers, say, guys, this is what I'm being told to ask for. This is the work I have. This is what we're willing to pay for it. Then you have the obligation to report back the results of that, saying, yes, here are the types of people I'm getting. I have a number of examples of this, but there's a company I've been working with recently who felt that their freelance market, everybody should be making 15 or 20 bucks an hour, and that's all they were worth. And then they complained about the fact that their freelance labor pool was not very good. And I was going, well, if that's all you're paying, then that's all you're going to get. Well, we don't want to pay more because we don't think the labor market is any good. Well, the fact is there was a fantastic labor market out there, but they're making 300 and 400 bucks a day. And this company was getting not the best workers, putting them in jobs that were a little bit over their head and not having a great success rate. So the old axiom, you get what you pay for, holds true. So by all means, report back. Here's the results. Here's the person you wanted. They're not going to take this. Here's the person we got. And sometimes we have to execute the policy in order to shine some light on it, see if it is indeed the right policy. And sometimes we need to be asking less. You know, it is a free market. I don't like taking advantage of freelancers personally. That is my prejudice. And I've said that many times before. But in the current market, I think freelancers would be willing to work for a little bit less, as long as I don't make it look like I'm trying to take advantage of them, which I think is what you're intimating. So, yes, you can keep your PPP money as a 1% loan. There's lots of options you have to do with that. The idea was to pass the money through, and you would get it refunded, or you wouldn't have to pay that loan back. But sure, you can keep it as a 1% loan, or you can get an EIDL loan at 3.45% on a 30-year note. There's lots of cheap money out there, but here's a chance to, you know, either pay severance to employees or help folks out, help them put groceries on the table, help them keep their health care intact. There's a lot of good reasons to use it on the employees as it was intended, but I won't judge the decisions that you have to make for your business. Is there a protocol for how to clean equipment before it goes out and when it comes back in? I would take a look at the Event Safety Alliance guide. There's some comments in there. There's actually products designed to do that. If you'll call your local rental company, your Abbey Rents or whatever the big rental supply house is that does tents, tables, and chairs, most of them sell that product. They buy it in bulk. They have to sanitize everything that comes back in, and you can get some of that from them, or just simply talk to them about their protocols. I don't think we're going to be hosing down electronic equipment, but we've done crazier things, right? Point of order, somebody asked me about why they can't see the questions that are being asked, because in order for that to happen, I've got to manually click on each one to release it to be shown in the thing. And I'm working here by myself. I don't have help. I don't want help. Nobody volunteer. So I apologize for that. It doesn't bother me if you ask a question that's already been asked. I won't embarrass you by calling you out for it. I do kind of scan these, screen them as I read through them. Okay. Have you seen the YouTube video, We Are Events, Live Events Coalition? It was posted on Facebook. I'd like to know what you think about it. I don't have an opinion on it. There's so many things out there. I'm very much trying not to have a bully pulpit in my role here. I'm trying to help you make business decisions. Anybody who's tried to help right now, I think helps. So I applaud everybody's efforts to try and bring attention to our industry. Let's see. The news has been so vague about what is open and what is allowed exactly right now. That should tell you something. Is there any good source for exactly what is being open and allowed right now by city, state, region? No, there's probably not. It's vague because it is unclear. So take that as a hint. You're going to have to isolate what you're trying to find out and go to the best source of information for that in order to do that. It's like the question earlier about, you know, are there parks that are open? You need to go to the parks department, because there's not going to be a general repository of information on this sort of thing. And even if there were, it changes like almost every day. Do your research, do your own footwork and due diligence, but it's going to be vague for a while. Clients are crying poor right now too. Same statement to them. You get what you pay for. Now that's a horrible thing to say to a client. Clients are crying poor. They have a budget. Find out what it is. Give them. You can give a lot of bang for the buck if the client will tell you what their budget is. All right? If you want to get as much as you can get for that money, putting it out to bid is the wrong way to get that. It is absolutely the wrong way, wrong approach for a customer who's trying to leverage their buying power, is putting something out to bid. You want to leverage your buying power, go to a trusted supplier, say I have exactly this much money, I can't go over this budget, make that money work well for me. Okay? That's what partnership is all about. Explain that to them, say, I'll give you my whole shop, okay, if you'll just give me a budget. Okay? I mean, that's the conversation. We need to be having honest conversations with our customers. And a customer crying poor is simply saying to you, they have limitations. Help them manage those limitations and make the most out of those limitations. There are no small jobs, just small budgets. Okay? And right now, you got a lot of time and resources available. You can give a lot of bang for the buck and build some customer loyalty in the process. What should one do if they have been furloughed since March, but are fielding sales calls, prospecting, and sending out quotes without compensation? That's between you and your employer. If that's what you were required to do, I would certainly have a conversation with my unemployment office about that, about what's appropriate for that. I can't give you legal advice. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a human resources expert. There is an inequity there. I agree with you. If you're an owner and you've got people on furlough and you're expecting them to keep up their job with the promise that they're going to get called back again at some later date, you better take a hard look at what you're doing and where your PP money is been spent. And promises aren't going to buy groceries right now, so I encourage you to find a better solution. Is the Avixa guide you have been referencing available on the website? I'm not sure what Avixa guide I was referring to. Avixa's got some great resources. There are links on the web page for all the COVID-related resources and the live events resources that are on the webinar replay page. Particularly, I think if you go up to the first and second webinar, there's quite a few links there. Look at all the webinars. You don't have to watch the webinars, but in the text body, there are lots of links to things that I've talked about in there. And trust me, if I mentioned something, there's probably a link there. Okay. How are we doing on time? We're doing good. Do you think there will be governance changes that effectively eliminate 1099 gig workers, such as California, because of the difficult position those people have been put in by the crisis? I've said this before, and I don't mind answering the question again. I think this is very important. I think we're going to see more and more states requiring workers to be W-2 workers. I think it's actually a good thing for our industry. We do have the issue of benefits and healthcare that have to be worked out, but that is also symptomatic of some of our governmental issues that need to be sorted out. Again, talk about, finding out who's swimming naked. We have a healthcare system that's been clearly revealed to not have any pants on. So I think eliminating 1099 gig workers, I think just making the requirements for 1099 gig workers a little bit higher is a thing that is going to happen. And honestly, I've been encouraging that, and I started writing about that in the early 2000s and making a stink about that. I think you need to have people who work on your shows on W-2, even if they are freelancers. I know not all freelancers agree with that, and I'm sorry, but it is actually to your advantage, and you actually have a tax advantage as a W-2 over a 1099. You're going to save your self-employment tax, which is effectively getting a 13% raise, and who doesn't want that? But some people like to feel that they are more independent, and I get that. You can be independent and be a W-2. Another question, would you recommend that a company plans to handle all of their own disinfection of equipment and the event space on site, of the equipment and the event space on site once set up, or plan to work with the client to have it done by a separate company? Honestly, if I'm a full service event production company and I'm doing the audio, video, lighting, maybe the content, managing the meeting for whatever it might be, if I'm going to control a ballroom or an environment for a client, I would certainly offer to be that disinfecting company, even if I use a subcontractor to do it, and take control of the environment, because I'm protecting my employees. And that is paramount. I'm not going to entrust somebody else to do the job that it takes to protect my employees. I want to do that. I'm going to protect them extremely well, which is also going to protect the client, because the client's coming in and sitting down and working at the graphic stations and talking to the teleprompter operator and putting their hands on the podium, and I'm protecting them as well. So by all means, I think it's a value that you can sell. I think it's got good value that you can put into this. And honestly, nothing against hotels. I don't really want to trust a hotel to clean my ballroom or my equipment or my podium or my scenery. So you should do it by all means. Get a couple more questions here. I got, given that revenue not be coming back soon and weathering the crisis means conserving cash, how does one find a balance between opportunity, risk, and maintaining cash? Okay, that's, you've asked a fundamental business question. You're not going to make money without risking money. Okay? You can conserve cash and then you're going to have the same amount of cash. So you're going to have to make those choices. I think the middle of the road advice is until you're starting to see, or you've positioned yourself to see regular opportunities, whether they're streaming gigs or whatever, until you start seeing enough income to cover your basic overhead, I'm going to be extremely conservative on cash. When I start exceeding my basic overhead and picking up a few more gigs, and I'm keeping my variable costs under control because I'm only bringing people in on demand, so I'm generating gross profit, then I'll be willing to take a little bit more risk, maybe buy a piece of gear or something like that, but not a tremendous amount until we're well into phase 4 and you're back at 25, 30, or 40% of your old revenue, in which case, with your new lowered overhead and your new understanding of risk, I think you'll take much more prudent risks at that time. So that's a good question. It's a different answer for everyone because everybody's tolerance for risk is different. To better understand your tolerance for risk, go play the live event-opoly game, and you'll get some insights to where you think you fit in. Have you seen any good examples of businesses providing healthcare for the 1099 contract staff? No, because they are not employees. But if you have W-2 contract staff, there are models for providing healthcare or healthcare allowances for part-time employees. You talk to your healthcare provider about that, or your human resources advisor about that. But you can certainly do it. There's no reason you can't do that. There is I think, of course, I was a staffing company in my previous life. I think there's a great opportunity for staffing companies to become, particularly if we start to have W-2 mandates in more states than California, that we're going to have employers of record, and we're going to go to a third-party staffing company or employer of record to pay payroll stuff. The film industry's done this for decades, have an employer of record for film payrolls that is not the payroll or not the producer of the film. We can do that as well. Matter of fact, those companies already exist. So I think we're going to see a great push in that direction. And I think it's going to be good for our industry in doing that. And it creates the opportunity for temporary workers, and I was a freelancer for a long time, to have access to healthcare and benefits by working for one employer where all my gigs are paid through that employer. So there's some great discussion points there. All I can really say is it's all going to change. But I think a lot of the changes are going to be for the better, because we're going to put some clothes back on. We're going to make sure that we have more bases covered. We're going to quit cutting so many corners, and we're going to be a little bit risk averse, and that's some of the things that are going to help us be more risk averse. Okay, so that's it for the questions for right now. Thank you guys for being with us once again. I hope this was valuable and fun. I look forward to reading the chats. Yeah, we got 50 comments there in the chats. It'll be fun to look at. I see a couple of discussions going on. So be well, be safe. Schedule a phone call with me. Happy to chat with you, help you with your business, whatever you need to do. Or figure out how you want to work with me. That's possible. Check out the Avixa resources. Again, the webinar replay page will be updated here shortly, and any additional links will be put on there so that you can go to those resources directly yourself if you can't find them by then. So thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I'm going to talk to you again next week. Be well.